takes a village to build a startup.
Welcome everyone. Good morning. Welcome to this session. It takes a village to build a startup. First of all, congratulate the MedTech World's team for putting off this amazing conference today. And we are excited to start this topic to try to figure out which are the secret recipes to create successful startup. We have with us a stellar panel going to help us to figure out that. So we can kick off with a quick round of introductions. I might start myself. My name is Andrew Ortega Bardaguer. I've been 15 years in corporations, and I moved recently, 2 years ago, to become a founder of Intelvask. Intelvask is the startup who has created the world's first sensor to monitor vascular flow remotely for peripheral arterial disease patients and help anticipate fatal cardiovascular conditions. So with this, I will give the word to Thomas.
Thank you so much, and it's a pleasure to be here. By way of introduction, my name is Tom Busby. I've been raising capital for nearly 20 years for a variety of different passions and causes that are close to my heart. The last 10 years has been with Outcome Capital. Outcome is a highly specialized life sciences and healthcare dedicated strategic advisory and investment banking group. We phenotypically look like our clients. We have more PhDs, MDs, and master's level scientists than we do MBAs. And though I self-identify as an MBA, it's important that the companies that we represent, we can truly understand their data and the patient impact that they have to offer. I just want to say it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much, everyone.
I'm Joseph Snyder with Lifeblood, co-founded Lifeblood with Giovanni, who you've seen on the stage for the past 2 days, and he's giving his own voice a break so that I can talk for the company today. We are a talent acquisition and advisory firm which focuses heavily on medtech startups to early growth stage companies. We are split between the US and Europe as our main markets, with heavy influence from Israel as well.
Thanks so much. I work with LifeSci Partners. We're a global advisory and investment firm. Most of our people are based in the US with offices in Boston and New York. And we have about 60 people in Europe and 6 people in Israel, including myself. We do primarily investor relations. We have an investment bank. We've got a consulting business, a venture fund, and a few other divisions, a total of 9. And it's great being here.
Very good. My name is Braulio Ortiz, and I'm the principal and co-founder for Biotechnica, which is a regulatory compliance, quality, and engineering consulting firm. We have approximately 28 employees, over 70 independent contractors, so we're 100 strong. We have all of the major Fortune 500 companies as clients that you know or are familiar with in this group: Abbott Laboratories, Boston Scientific, Johnson & Johnson, Medtronic, et cetera, plus various legal firms, as well as startups. So very pleased to be here.
Yeah, it's great to be here. My name is Spencer Todd. I'm CEO, co-founder of Formerly AI. So I was a medical device consultant for many years, used to be at the FDA. Formed Formerly a few years ago. Essentially, we are creating a AI-powered co-pilot for medical device startups to kind of help build their quality management system, technical documentation, to help get their medical device certification in the EU under MDR and in the FDA as well. So excited to be here.
I'm Darcy Bockert, founder and CEO with Prolucid. We're a Canadian-based software development firm. We help small startup companies all the way through large multinationals with project-based development. And my background actually is a software engineer, so decided that wasn't challenging enough. Why not go into business and see how that is? So happy to be part of the panel and to a great discussion.
Amazing, guys. Thank you so much. So today we are going to divide the conversation in 2 main blocks. We will try to figure out which is the secret sauce of a successful startup. And on the other hand, we are going to talk about the special attributes that make a successful CEO. So I might start with you, Tom. As an investment banker, you might be exposed to many different startups, and you might figure out a little bit what makes one startup stand out versus another. So why don't you enlighten us a little bit regarding this topic.
Sure. So at Outcome, we advise on mergers and acquisitions, private equity, private debt placements, build-to-buy transactions, strategic partnerships, and everything in between. And it's in working with companies that you start to realize there's no recipe for success, but there are certain suggestions that most companies should adhere to if they're really trying to be successful in the market. So the simplest recipe that I can give is it starts with the market, then it goes to the technology, and it ends with the team. You need to identify a market that is open to new technologies with significant unmet needs. The world doesn't need any more minimally innovative technologies in the world. The technologies that develop need to be surrounded by strong IP. They need to be able to be adopted by the physicians that are going to use them without changing those workflows. And finally, you need to have the right team of people in place to really carry the ball over the goal line. That's where I have to give a shout out actually to Lifeblood.
First the need, then the solution. Would you agree, guys?
Yes. So you start with the market need, then you need to look at what technology is going to best address that market need. And then it's saying, if you are that founder, what are the different capabilities that I need to surround myself with? So the title of this presentation is It Takes a Village, and it truly does take a village, but as your company grows up, you may need to move into the cities. And as you're soliciting that advice, you need to be careful also maybe that you're not getting advice from the village idiot. Advice is sometimes free to receive, and you need to separate when you're receiving an opinion from true advice. So for those founders out there, you need to be really careful about who you're listening to, and also understand that what might work for one company in one market may really not be appropriate for what you're trying to do.
Okay, yeah, great insights. Anyone else?
I would like to add something there. Like many things in life, timing is everything. So at some point, not too far down the road, the CEO and the boards of investors should consider bringing in a very strong third-party independent consultant, regulatory compliance, quality engineering, for two primary reasons. One, you shouldn't rely solely on your internal staff. They could be blinded or biased due to limited, experience with product launches or startup companies. So you really want an independent set of eyes to come in and look at the regulatory quality and engineering strategies to make sure they're sound. Number two, venture capitalists should be seeking to protect their investment and minimize the risk. So having a good due diligence audit to make sure they're on the right track before they get too far down the road is a strong suggestion. And we've served hundreds of clients over the 28 years, and one story comes to mind that's very related to this topic. So we had a prominent client who at the time, a few years ago, was launching the second drug-coated stent at the time. So that was a blockbuster product. And unfortunately, the management team and the technical resources involved made some mistakes and took some shortcuts on the process validation front. So when the FDA came in to do their PMA inspection, they got several significant observations, and it delayed their PMA approval by 6 months. Now, again, it was a blockbuster product, right? So first year sales was supposed to be $800 million. So that mistake cost them $400 million, almost $500 million. And then they had to hire us to give them the guidance, help them with the 43 responses, help them with the corrective actions, and finally address those validation deficiencies. And that led to getting their PMA approval. So if they would have hired us 8 to 12 months earlier, we could have prevented that significant loss in sales.
Yeah, this brings a very good question I wanted to give it to you, Joseph. So there is, obviously, there's talent that has to be incorporated at staged startups. So you as a talent manager, when startups we should be looking at hiring someone or subcontracting?
So to piggyback, first off, Braulio, you mentioned the successful organizations, the technical, the regulatory, the quality. I would add clinical to that. You talked on the market. You're not even getting invested in anymore if you don't know how you're getting to market, your customer segmentation, your reimbursement. If the money's not there and it's not backed by the technical side of things, the company's being set up for failure. And from a talent perspective, it can go many ways. We see, I was talking to a CEO yesterday, And he said that he was deliberately delayed on the QMS side of things. Other people build that in from the very start to have it up and running, and others outsource it and have an expert come in and catch it up for them. So there's not a perfect way to get it done, but the best companies and leaders know that they have weak points, they identify it, they have the self-awareness, and then they start filling the gaps, whether it's with external consultants or whether if they have the capital, bringing in an expert internally can be the right way to go as well. If you have a head of clinical that has the FDA connections or a head of regulatory, sometimes it's good to bring them in-house full-time because it's a very specific niche and the FDA is a relationship-driven market, so you want that full-time on your staff. Other times, if you don't have the connections or you don't know the expert, you go to somebody that has them already and knows the strategics and has probably lived it a few times and can share the pitfalls before you fall into them.
So the takeaway I will get that startup should know when it's the right time for each startup to bring the talent in or subcontracting. Yeah, really, really insightful, really important. So, Michal, you have anything to add on that? You wear a lot of hats. So, in terms of successful startup, what would be your point of view?
I think the most successful way for a startup to guide themselves is to always put themselves in the investor's shoes, to say to themselves, I am now the investor in my company, and how am I going to return the money that I invested in the company to myself? The way I'm going to do that is by making sure that this company has an exit strategy. So that could be through M&A, but it could also be through commercial revenue. But making sure that my product has a market fit, making sure that I'm surrounded by talent that can help me get there. But putting yourselves in those shoes and constantly thinking, okay, how am I doing this in the most cost-efficient way? How am I doing this in the fastest way possible? And never cutting corners is probably the most important. And surrounding yourself, whether it's full-time employees or it's outsourced, doesn't really make a difference as long as I'm constantly thinking about this is my company and this is how I'm going to bring my money back to the investors. And working with, I think we've got a team here of great people who can create a village that helps every startup to grow itself. I just want to shout out for, yeah, oh, go ahead.
I actually just wanted to say I could not agree with what you just said more. So most people get into healthcare and MedTech because they want to help other people's lives. There's easier ways to make money. There's easier sectors to have this be done. Life science is the most strategically dense area that we could go to. So sometimes we do see founders that almost approach it like they need a donation, like they're looking for a philanthropic donation. When what you really need to focus on is I'm getting an investment, and the onus is on me to provide a return. So as an example, stroke is an area that I care very much about. It's a disease state that has affected my family. It is an extremely hard area to raise capital in, to change those paradigms and to change the treatments and to do the trials, to dislodge TPT. It's just a very hard market. And so that's where you have some individuals and founders that get affected by a personal experience and they extrapolate a little bit too much of this is what the world needs now.
Yeah, no, we could take away that the successful startup definitely needs a roadmap and have very clear at which stage we need what until from the inception till the M&A or IPO. So I'll give you, Spencer, as regulator. So you have received for years many new technologies, ways of disrupting a particular condition that might not have changed for years. So what is your point of view? How do you help companies to make the regulators understand that maybe it was time for a change?
Yeah, I think in my experience, I'm going to echo some things that are already said here. really the strategy is the same for most companies, which is always focus in the beginning on product market fit and never lose track of that. And then really base your regulatory strategy on that. And I'm obviously probably a little biased, but I think that regulatory strategy is super critical to define in the beginning, to have very clear transparency on throughout the whole process, so that you can kind of foresee a lot of the resource-heavy obstacles that are going to come up along the way. And so the way to do that is to really talk to people early, engage with people that you trust on this type of topic, because there's levers that you can pull, right? Trying to get to market, trying to get regulatory approval. There's different pathways that you can go down based on what the product type is. And so for these more advanced technologies, speaking to experts about that early on and figuring out kind of what is the current thinking in EU MDR or maybe the FDA, just like releasing some of these new AI guidances and things like that. How do we kind of tackle that in our current product is really important. And then once you've kind of defined that, I think you can decide, okay, is it going to be enough for me to essentially outsource this to somebody? Or should I really look at hiring someone who's going to be a specialist on my team that's going to be here with us for the next like 5 years and be able to get us not only through certification and commercialization, but any product changes and things like that down the road, you have that kind of internal expertise. So, having both, Braulio and Joseph support on that, understanding who those candidates are, and then kind of choosing what works best for you in that circumstance, I think is the best kind of approach.
Yes.
Just to follow up on that, when we, a lot of great points there around making sure you really have that product market fit to start. And then as you're executing, we get asked this all the time, what should we do ourselves versus where do we go out and get help? And I think that's a really critical question that if you do right, will help set the stage as you go. There are things core to your product, your technology that we, even though we could do it and help, we say don't own that yourselves. Make sure that core piece, the algorithm, whatever it might be, and that's where you want to go out and hire the right people. There's a lot of things that you just don't need to do. As a CEO, you have got so many responsibilities. If you don't need to do it and you can focus on more valuable tasks, find a partner, find someone that can come in, find the right one, don't get the village idiot, I completely agree, but you get someone that's done it before and they will elevate your team, they will elevate you, they're going to help you get there in a much more successful way.
I'm going to hold this thought because you just described now a little bit the CEO, what the CEO should prioritize and know when to spend the resources internally and when to rely on trusted partners. So I will come back to you, Joseph, and as recruiting talent, you talk for a living with CEOs all the time, so you probably will have quite good insights. Which differentiates a good CEO from a great one?
So there's a few things that they all seem to have in common. The unspoken one is always just an insatiable work ethic. They're the ones who are going to work day and night. The family will be supportive. They're not all sleeping under their desks like Elon Musk, but some of them do. Outside of that, which is a baseline requirement, they have the emotional intelligence to connect with all sorts of people. When you're building teams, you have to be able to find people to manage up at the board, executive level, deal with physicians, all of the external piece. But the CEO has to be able to manage all the way down, especially at startups with small teams where you can connect with the individual contributors. If you have a product and assembly line, you have to be able to talk with the technicians. Being in front of people is a natural comfort zone for most CEOs, and if it's not, the introverted ones that end up being successful, it's a learned skill set anyways. So between the EQ side of things, the work ethic, the only other thing I would add would be the awareness again of where are their blind spots and understanding they can't do everything. They have to let go, knowing when is the right time, what to let go of, and then trusting the people you hire. When you hire people, you hire them for a reason. It's let them go do their job, tell them what you need done, and let them surprise you with the results and take it from there.
Interpersonal skills, of course, are very important. As CEO, myself, I can reflect, you have to talk with many different people, internally, clinicians, regulators, every single stakeholder has different priorities, and there are different ways to communicate things. It's one of the challenges of a CEO. Someone would add into that, Darcy?
Yeah, I always say, and it's maybe not a endorsement to go and become one, being a CEO can be a lonely place. You're responsible for all these things. You have a team that you're supporting. And back to the theme of it takes a village, you need peers that you can talk to. You need advisors that you can work with. You need so many people surrounding you, because otherwise it can be isolating. And the other thing is, it's kind of like being a parent. For those of you that are parents, you don't get much of a handbook. You kind of all of a sudden, you go home, you got a new baby, and you're trying to figure out what do I do next? Where's the manual? And the way I would relate that, it's okay to fail, but when you do, fail fast and recover. Surround yourself with great people where you can, with mentors, and don't be afraid to reach out for help. I think that's something. Even for myself, I founded the company in 2008, made all kinds of mistakes along the way, had to really figure it out. That's okay. Just keep going and have that support system. That's going to be huge for your success.
Parenting analogy always gets me to being a parent of 2 young kids, but the best advice I had before my first son was born was be the parent you want your child to be. And then that can relate directly to leading teams. Be the manager, be the leader you want your team to be, because you want to be able to backfill yourself and have them echo the culture you're trying to build. And then that goes with asking for help when you need it. Panel yesterday, serial entrepreneurship. Some of the most successful people in the industry were up here on stage, and we asked the question, how it can get lonely, how do you avoid that? They said it's your network, it's not being afraid to ask for help. And it goes back to figuring out who you need to reach out to. MedTech's a small industry. You can reach out to tons of people, and it's very rare that they're going to say, no, I don't have time for you. Everybody's trying to do what's best for each other.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with you guys. Yeah, it's resonating to me. You are repeating a lot of examples where humility is very important for a CEO, knowing that you don't know everything, and when you have to fail fast and try to figure out ways around it. That's critical to keep psychological stamina high, which is really important for CEOs. Yeah. So, anyone else? Spencer?
Hello. The one thing I was going to echo on that was essentially the honesty aspect, is like knowing your strengths and weaknesses. From my experience, CEOs that know that are usually very good at leading companies, leading by example, and then knowing when to ask for help. And so I think part of that, comes into play too. When you know that there's things that, if you're not a technical founder or CEO, you're not going to go learn how to code and create your app, right? So I think CEOs are naturally curious and they want to be connected to everything in the company. But knowing what your strengths are, knowing okay, I'm probably going to need to spend some resources to get this done and get it done in like a quality way, so that I don't have to go back and redo it later down the road and waste time and money on that kind of thing, is really important for CEOs to understand from the beginning. And you're never going to get it right the first time, every single time. You're always going to fail, but yeah, fail often and like know exactly kind of the risks that you're taking along the way, so you strategically kind of invest in those things along the process.
No, support, absolutely, it's key. Michal, I will hand it to you. You give support to CEOs. So what's your take on this, and humility and ethics of a leader?
It's actually what I was going to talk about, but everyone else did. So maybe I'll just mention something else that's super critical, and we haven't really touched base on it, but it's the whole side of communications and selling. As a CEO, you're selling, right? You're selling to, you're doing deals, you're selling to investors, and you need to be good at that, and you need to invest in shaping your story. And sometimes, we're not always great at it, and we can rely on other people to help us with it, but I think it's something that's just out there. You meet with companies that have crazy technology, but it's just not being presented right. And you meet with companies with less interesting technology, and they're doing an awesome job at selling it, and they're the ones raising the money and taking it forward, which is unfortunate, obviously, for patients afterwards. So I think that, it's a skill that you need to learn, but it's again about putting yourself in that putting yourself on the other side of the table, whether it's an investor, whether it's a partner that you're speaking with about a deal that you're doing. It's putting yourself on their side and seeing what's in it for them and speaking to that. So making sure you have all the points that they want seen covered by creating a village, but also just constantly keeping in mind what's in it for the other side, which is just important in my opinion.
And then I love your comment, because now I will have a question to the panel. Let's see what you think. Taking your point about the CEO has to sell constantly. We are, again, interacting with all sorts of stakeholders, not the same. Selling the project to an investor, either it's institutional or angel, also changes. But you have also to sell your project to a surgeon sometimes, which are completely different kind of people, which are really data-driven, and because every single thing that they change, that may jeopardize a patient's life. But also the team. You have to motivate the team and always look in the next carrot. So which is what would be your inputs regarding a good balance of being really optimistic? Because CEOs, we have to be real optimistic and not overselling to generate this confidence and trust from the partners that we interact with. Anyone?
I guess I'll jump in first. I mean, the best CEOs, they're authentic. They're the ones you see on stage, and then you have a beer with them at the bar, and it's the same person. There's no on-off switch. It's who they are. They're comfortable with who they are. It can sometimes be a take it or leave it. This is me, but they're successful because of that. And even with piggybacking on the sales side, I mean, you co-founded a company. You're a CEO right now. You guys are still living it, even if you're not developing a product. I mean, the scar tissue that you have to be able to endure coming through it as well is part of the equation.
And in my case, a lot of trials and tribulations, 28 years in business, 40 years in the industry. I've seen it all. But you have to be able to sleep at night. So yes, you're selling to all the stakeholders. You want your staff to be super motivated, right? So you've got to be the one out front leading the charge, and they'll follow you. So the other thing I was going to add, and it's a little bit different off subject, but I heard it in one of the talks yesterday, and I thought it was a very important statement. So I know that we're managing investors' money and we want to do their best with it, but don't be afraid to spend, and don't be too frugal in certain areas, because, for example, I'm getting consultant support. You can find lots of consultants, onesie twosies. They may be good in a certain area, but you want to hire the best, whether it's for your talent recruitment and Lifeblood Capitals, or a consulting firm. Hire someone with the track record. Hire someone that has depth, that can bring in the special skills needed for your product and project, and don't try to shortchange yourself, because it could be significantly damaging to your company.
Darcy?
Back to the question around overselling versus not. As an engineer by background, didn't learn a lot about sales in school. I think that a degree in psychology or other things would have been a lot more helpful for what I do. But when founding the company, that was one of my primary things, that I couldn't agree more with the comments. We're always selling. You're selling the vision to the team. You're selling projects. You're selling in everything you do. And I struggle with it. And this is one of the failures that I had of, you try and read a book on how to sell, and you go in with a script and so on. And it got to a point where I had to just throw it all out and realize we're helping people. We're all helping people. And when that mentality switch changed, whether you're helping a patient, you're helping a company, you're helping, now it comes from a place of genuine, interest in, what are you doing? How can I help? If I can, great. If I can't, that's okay. We still learn something. And that was a massive differentiator for us and as a company.
Yeah, authenticity, it's key. Thomas, yeah.
I was just going to mention, I appreciate your honesty so much to say selling did not come natural to me. It's a really hard thing, because I'll be honest, selling came very natural to me. But there's a dislocation between who is really good at talking about the technology and the impact, and who is maybe really good at creating enthusiasm. So oftentimes startup founders in MedTech are technology oriented, PhDs, engineers, so on and so forth. And selling is almost unnatural to them. It almost seems as though they're devaluing themselves and their backgrounds by going and saying, you should buy this. What is interesting, though, is enthusiasm is contagious, so act accordingly. And so for those who are thinking, wow, selling is really hard, don't think about selling anything. Think about creating enthusiasm for your technology. And the sell will happen naturally from there. It's also the sort of thing where if you're a founder out there meeting with investors, this is not presenting your PhD thesis. So when we work with companies and we have an investor meeting, one of the first things that we say is, this is not a presentation. This is a dialogue. This is a two-way conversation. And for many that have a more technology-oriented background, they're saying, well, I don't know how to do that. What if I get a question I don't have an answer for? Well, the answer is, I really am excited to go find an answer to that, and thanks for bringing that up, because I hadn't thought of that before. And that's for me, too, where watching pitches in different industries can actually be really helpful.
What I would take away from these guys is a savvy CEO should acknowledge its own background and then complement himself, surrounding himself by a C-suite that can bring this other, if it's an engineer, bringing the sales or the commercial background and the medical background as well. So CEOs should create a C-suite that complement each other. And there is a component you mentioned, Joseph, regarding the board. We have been listening in the last years, downsizing rounds, and on one side of the table because of the casuistic situation. But on the other hand, sometimes exits were harder because we were, well, CEOs, they get pressed by investors sometimes overselling the outcomes, and the sales are going to get once they get commercial approval. And this brings also many rotation in commercial executives. So it's really important to be authentic and to be truth with yourself and your beliefs, because you cave sometimes to the pressures of the board, and you might end up in a situation that you don't want to be in.
Yeah, and I think you could probably elaborate on this more on the financial side, but if you start, excuse my language, with bullshitting your way through it, it will catch up to you, and everything's going to fall apart. It doesn't matter if that is talking to the investors, it doesn't matter if it's with the FDA, it doesn't matter if it's with your own team. You can't keep hiding things. It's going to come out one way or another, no matter what it is. But from an investor side, if they find out about that, I'm guessing that relationship's damaged, and you're not just damaging one relationship, that's a network that will tell you, don't touch this person, you can't trust them.
You definitely have one shot only. Once you're out there, it's such a small ecosystem. So a lot of the advice to these early stage companies, like, oh, you want to reach out to VCs? Great. How much are you looking to raise? What's your next milestone? Are you in preclinical? Are you in clinical? Maybe you're not the right fit for VCs right now, but you're more of a fit for family offices. So let's think about those target investors. And if you want to reach out to these VCs, you can. But when you come to them, you can be very honest and just say, look, I know that I'm too early for you, but I'd love your advice on this. And you can do that alone, or you can do it with an advisor. You know, a lot of times there is an advantage to going with somebody else, because you'll have, you know, I was in a meeting last week with a company. I introduced them to an investor. They said, oh my gosh, that was the best meeting. He knew exactly what we were talking about. He has experience in this market. He's going to introduce us to all his network. And the investor came back and he said, these guys are overselling. They have no idea what they're talking about. They spoke nothing about their competition. They think that they're the, like, you know, the sun is, you know, over there, and they really just have to go home and do their homework, and I can't connect them with my network, even though I promised to, until they do that homework, and this is what they should do. So, you know, whether you go alone with that integrity to just say, look, you know, I know that I'm too early, but I'd love your advice. And I think, you know, investors appreciate that, and they all love hearing about these early stage companies, even if it's not relevant for their fund, or going through somebody else and getting that honest feedback from them can really help you kind of build your strategy and shape your story so that you're best prepared for the investors that you actually want to speak with.
Absolutely. So I acknowledge we are short in time, so before to wrap up with some take-home messages, wanted just to check if there is any questions from the audience. Well, with that, we have talked about how hard it is to build a startup, and I can confirm that. You need to surround yourself with savvy people, like all our stellar panel that we had today. The humility, it's really important to know where you cannot get, and surround yourself from extraordinary people, both from the personal, with a very high ethics, and also professional, knowing very well which are the pain points that you have. And yeah, we have a question here. Giovanni?
I do have a question. As service providers, and especially it's a testament to everyone who's on the panel right now, how important is it for us to network amongst each other and have a network of other service providers that we can use to add value to the companies that we're helping to build? How strong is that network, and how should it be?
Any takers?
I'll do a quick attempt at this one. It's so important. Even for us, we know what we do really well, and it's just one small piece of what all these companies need help with. And being able to say, hey, we know talent, we know regulatory, we know all these other things, we know investors, we highly recommend them. That is so impactful, because if we do a good job and we refer someone that does a great job, it's going to make them even better. So that network, we value it so highly, it's critical.
And I would add to that, this is a relationship-driven industry. MedTech is big, but everybody knows everybody. We see each other at the same conferences. We bounce around the world together. If you're in it for a transactional relationship, you're going to be left behind immediately. So if there's somebody we know that can help, it's beneficial for us, even as a firm, to send them over, because if we help them now, that client, potential client, will remember it and come back and possibly utilize us later. And that's how the cycle keeps going, and it doesn't matter where you pass them, but paying it forward is a thing.
Ends up in genuine relationships and try to help each other within our industry. At the end of the day, we all want the same, to bring extraordinary products that benefit patients. And I agree, it's a big industry, but still we keep it very small. We know each other, and our reputation precedes us. So absolutely.
Just like the CEOs, it's one of those things where it doesn't have to be lonely, even on the consulting side. It can feel that way, but there's a lot of us out there. There's a lot of CEOs, so that's where you just have to keep connecting.
If I can, Giovanni, I have a saying, networking is the party that never ends, where you never know who is invited. You know, it's a funny thing. You'll go to conferences like this, you'll have dozens and dozens of meetings, and then that's wonderful, and then you end up at an airport sitting next to someone and having the best conversation ever. And so you need to be open to that a little bit. So Giovanni, I will say, you put this panel together. I was actually working on a deal that was very pertinent to one of the members here, and called and said, hey, I want to share something with you. So getting your name out there and having the smile on your face and getting to the point can really be great. So it's a great point, Gio.
Yeah, absolutely. With that, we'll wrap up this session. Thank you very much for everyone.